Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from me in a slightly gloomy Hastings today. It's just gone 1 o'clock, so I'm just going to give everyone a chance to join. Do feel free to drop into the Q&A box to say hi. We've disabled the chat feature as it can cause problems for some people using screen readers, but the Q&A option is still live. I see lots of you joining. Hi Sarah, hiya. Thanks for saying hi. And Siobhan, hello too. Just give it a few more moments. Okay, I think we'll make a start now. So hello everybody and welcome to our webinar, Introduction to Making Word Documents Accessible. I'm Annie Mannion and I'm Digital Marketing Manager at AbilityNet, and I'll be running you through today's session. So just to go through a few bits of housekeeping, we have live captions provided by Andrew at MyClearText, and you can turn the captions on using the CC option on the control panel. And additional captions are available via streamtext.net/player?event=AbilityNet. And you can download the slides if you wish and follow along on our website, and that's at abilitynet.org.uk/word webinar. And if you have any technical issues or you need to leave early, don't worry, you'll receive an email within the next week sharing the recording, the transcript and the slides. And depending on how you joined the webinar, you'll find a Q&A window. So if you'd like to ask the panel any questions, do drop those in the Q&A area and we'll cover as many as possible at the end of the session. So for those of you who just joined, just a reminder, we've switched off the chat feature as it can cause problems for some people using screen readers. And just if you're able to feed in to fill in the feedback survey, you'll be directed to at the end. That would be great. So for anybody who isn't yet familiar with AbilityNet, we're now more than 25 years old, and we support older people and disabled people to use technology to achieve their goals at home, at work and in education. And we do this by providing specialist advice, accessibility testing and training, and free information such as this webinar. So today, discussing accessible Word documents, we're joined by James Baverstock, who is Principal Accessibility Consultant at AbilityNet. And we hope by the end of today, you'll have learned from James the key ways to use Word's features to make accessible documents. So I'm just going to start with a poll to find out a bit more about you all here today. So let me just launch the poll. So can you tell us if you can estimate the percentage of your organisation that creates accessible Word documents? Is it 100%, 80%, 50%, 20%, 0%, or not applicable? And again, depending on how you've joined the webinar, you may find you can't see the poll, but you can respond in the Q&A panel. So I'll just leave it a few more moments for everybody to respond. See the numbers going up. A few more to go. Oh, it's looking like 20% is the winner, but 50% close behind. So just give it a little bit longer for everybody to answer. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, and sharing the results, we can see that yeah, it's 41% of you have said 20% of your organisation create accessible Word documents. Then 30% say 50% create accessible Word documents. Then the next ones down are 80%, and that's 12% of you say that. And 0%, 8% of you think that the percentage of your organisation creates accessible Word documents, and then 3% at 100% and 6% not applicable. So I'll stop sharing that now, and hopefully, thank you for your responses, and James will now impart his wisdom. So over to you, James.
Okay. I'll just share my screen. Oh, apologies, I just need to make sure that I'm sharing. Might just need to unshare and just make sure I'm sharing sound. Yep, I'm sharing, should be sharing sound okay. Okay, so in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give a whistle-stop tour. Oh, can I just check? Am I sharing my screen okay? It is showing okay?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. So in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give a whistle-stop tour of some of the basic things that we can do to make our Word documents more accessible. And the first thing I want to cover is headings and setting heading levels correctly in Word with heading styles. So having descriptive headings in our documents helps provide structure for sighted users, but we also need our headings marked up with the correct heading level so users of screen readers can quickly understand the structure of a document and skip to content that interests them easily. And I'll demonstrate how we can set heading levels in our documents now. So I'm going to go through and open up a document with a Word document with quite good accessibility that we're going to have a look at. And we can see in this document, I've got some headings, and these headings are correctly marked up with heading styles. So I haven't just made the text big and bold using the font panel. I'm actually using proper heading styles. And this is what we want to do to make sure that our heading levels are going to be available for assistive technology. So we can see in the styles gallery here that I am using a heading 1 style for my main heading as it's selected there. And if I go to the next level down and I open up my styles panel so I can see a bit more clearly, you can see here that this is using a heading 2 style. So I'm marking up the headings with the correct heading level using heading styles. If you're not familiar with styles in Word, then styles allow you to set a certain formatting for elements. So I could modify the formatting here, and you can see that it sets the font size, the color, how the element looks. And if you update how the element looks here, it will apply to all of that type of element. So if I updated the formatting here, it would automatically apply to all of the heading level 2s. So this is really useful for keeping visual consistency across your documents, but it's also useful for accessibility in this case, because my heading 2, if I go down to format and have a look under font, have a look under paragraph rather, you can see here that it has this outline level of level 2. So this is information that's then conveyed to assistive technology that this heading is a level 2. And there's a way that you can easily see that visually in your documents. If you go to View and open up the navigation pane and have that open on the left-hand side, this provides a view of the headings within your documents, and they're nested so you can easily see that you're using the correct heading levels. So here I have a heading level 1, and then I've got 2 heading level 2s that are nested nicely under that. And if I wanted to add another heading, so let's suppose I wanted to add a heading level 3 under this. Suppose I wanted to add a heading level 3 called additional considerations. I could add this in, and if I select that, I could then style that using my styles panel. I could just click on heading 3 and I could make that a heading 3. And if we look at our navigation pane, we can see that that's then been indented under the level 2 heading there. So we can see that we've created that heading at the correct level. So this is the way that we can add headings into our documents correctly using heading styles. If we just go over quickly and see a much less accessible document, we can see here that it has headings and they visually look like headings. We've got them bolded, underlined, and so on, but they are not using heading styles. So we can see in the styles panel that this is just using normal style. It's not using a heading. And if we go to View and navigation pane, we can see that the document has no headings available. So there's no real headings available that would be there for assistive technology. So this would be bad. Another thing that we can think about, if we pop back to the slideshow, is making sure that we have descriptive link text in our documents. So making sure the purpose of links is obvious and self-evident from tabbing onto them with a screen reader. So we can enter a meaningful name in the text to display field so that there's something proper to describe the link. And I can just show an example of some bad practice again here. If we go through to that document, which isn't very accessible, we can see it has a few descriptive links. So we've got here Office Accessibility Checker, but it's got a whole group of links down here that just say click here, click here, click here. And these are not going to make a lot of sense for a screen reader user when they encounter them out of context. So with links, we want to right click on them, go to edit hyperlink, and we want to try to make sure that we've got descriptive text available in this text to display field. So we'd want to make sure that we had nice descriptive link text available. And I just want to quickly now just do a quick demo with a screen reader. We're going to be using NVDA, which is a free screen reader that's available for Windows, just to show how having properly marked up headings and links can be practically useful for screen reader users in terms of how they navigate documents in practice, just to show the usefulness of what we've just been discussing. So I'm going to go into my documents here, and I'll just swap these into read mode, and then just swap the other document into read mode here. Swap back to my other document. Oops. There we go. So I'm now going to open up the screen reader, so we can hear what it announces when it's reading through the document.
Taskbar. PowerPoint slide making Microsoft Word documents accessible. Docx Word. Microsoft Word document edit multi-line. Heading level 1 page 1 section 1 making Microsoft Word documents accessible.
So hopefully you were able to hear that. So you could see when we opened up the document, it announces the file name. It also announced that heading at the top of the document there. And if I wanted to read through the document, I could either get the screen reader just to read the whole document to me, or I could navigate line by line, just pressing the down arrow. So I'll just press the down arrow key now so it reads the next line.
Good use of Microsoft Word link styles, headings and specific formatting out of link rather than tab, spacebar and.
So I can read it, I can read the whole document, I can read it line by line. But the advantage of me having marked up the headings correctly is it also allows the screen reader user to access the document in a much more non-linear fashion. I can also navigate by headings, so I can skip between headings if I want to. So I'll just do that now to illustrate this. So if I press the H key, I will then skip to the next heading.
Page 1 section 1 considerations heading level 2.
And then I can press H again to skip down to the next heading.
Page 2 additional considerations heading level 3.
And then H again for the next heading.
Additional resources heading level 2.
So I can very quickly skip between headings. So especially a large document, this can be quite useful because I can quickly go between headings and find out what the subject matter is and then concentrate on the sections that interest me. Another way that I can get to the headings is by something called the elements list, which gives me a list of all the headings in the document. So I can bring that up
Elements
and just show what
type.
that looks like.
Element type. X new stop vid mute screen element
Just got to bring this over here. So you can see that it also has a list of all the links in the document. So the screen reader user can easily
Headings radio.
access links.
Links radio button checked. Or tree view. Office accessibility checker 4 of 13 level 0.
So you can go through all of these lists and potentially select a link that interests you. And because all the links have descriptive link text in this document, they all have a good descriptive name, but we also have a list of headings here.
Type, grouping, link, headings radio button checked Alt+H.
And then the headings are grouped in a tree view so that they're nested according to their heading level. Again, because we've marked them up correctly, they're available in this tree view to be browsed through.
Tree view, level 1 additional resources 2 of, level 2 additional considerations 1 of 1.
So this gives a whole other way to navigate the document. So you can get to things quickly if you're not able to see the entirety of the document. However, in our other document we were looking at, the bad example that doesn't have any headings marked up, this is not so easy for a screen reader user to use. So I'll just escape here.
Screen sharing meeting controls with
and swap to the other document.
Making Microsoft Desk
and then
use of Microsoft Word.
If I bring up the elements list again here,
element PowerPoint slideshow access.
So we can see here that in the links list, because we've got those links down the bottom of the page that just say click here, click here, click here. In the list of links which can be used, you've just got these click here links, which aren't going to be very descriptive when they're announced. And then if we go over to the headings.
Type, grouping, headings radio button checked Alt+H.
You can see for this document that the headings list is completely empty because we didn't mark up any headings at all. So that would obviously be a very bad experience. So hopefully this demonstration has shown how doing just the few things we've mentioned so far can make the navigability of the document much better for screen readers just by providing those descriptive headings with heading styles and having those descriptive lists. And I'll just close NVDA now.
Microsoft Word document with accessibility issues. Exit NVDA. OK button. And
we can pop back to the slide deck. And another important thing to think about with making our documents more accessible for screen readers is making sure that our informative images have alternate text. So there's something for the screen reader to announce for an image. If an image is decorative, we want to indicate it as such, so it doesn't get announced and potentially waste people's time. And I'll just demonstrate very quickly how we can do this within Word and other Office documents. So I'll just go through back to edit mode here. So I've got a small image here, just of a hand writing with a pen, and it looks to me that this is probably decorative. So I want to mark this as decorative. To put the alt text in, I just need to right click on it and do view alt text, and this brings up the alt text box. And this works the same in all Office applications. So if you've got Outlook or PowerPoint or Excel, you can add alt text to your images in exactly the same way. So here I have a choice of either writing an alternative description for the image, so describing what this image is, so that will be announced. In this case, I think this is probably a decorative image. It's not really saying anything. There's not much that needs to be got across there. So I would probably just choose to mark that as decorative. You also have an option to generate alt text for me, which will generate automatically generated alt text. In this case, it's not too bad. It's a hand holding a pen, but often this can have quite odd results. So it's not recommended generally to rely upon this. I think it has been promised by Microsoft that they are going to align this with generative AI as used with Copilot, which produces much better image descriptions. So at the point where Office aligns with that, you'll probably see the quality of the alt text that this produces greatly improve. Although you probably still need to manually check that it's doing it okay. Historically, the automatically generated alt text hasn't been too good. But in this case anyway, I probably just want to mark this as decorative because it's more of a decorative image. Something else we can think about is bullets and lists. So here, the critical thing, like with headings, we want to use the inbuilt headings within Word. For bullets and lists, we want to use the inbuilt function for lists within Word so that our lists are actually identifiable as such for assistive technology. So what we don't want to do is, as in this bad document, I've got a list down the bottom of the page here. And this has just been created by typing a dash and then a space, and it's not actually a list. So if I select that and had a look in the Home tab, you can see that the list icon is not selected here, and it's just using the normal style. It's not using the list style because it's not actually been marked up as a list. And similarly, I've got a structure here where it's kind of a bulleted list, but it's been done within a large nested invisible table instead, and the bullets are just alt text, are just images with no alt text. So this would be a bad way of doing this. But if we look at our good document,
James, sorry,
yep, sorry.
jump in. Is it possible to zoom in on the document? If it isn't at the moment, we can address this in the recording of this webinar.
I'm
But
sure we can make that bigger if that's helpful. Apologies for that.
no, that's good. Thank you.
I'll just make both of them bigger, and hopefully that will show a bit better. So here we have some lists again, but this time, and I need to go into the edit view here. If I select the list and I go into the Home tab, we can see that this time we have the bulleted list selected. So this has been formatted correctly as a bulleted list. And if we open up the Styles tab, we can see that this has been formatted as a list paragraph, which is what we want to see there. So it is correctly formatted as a list. And similarly, this tick list at the front, at the top of the document, is also using the list style. So these are then going to be identified appropriately by screen readers as lists. So we want to use that list function to create our lists. And tables within Word. So when you have a table structure, it should make sense for most sighted users, but the structure also needs to be able to be announced for screen reader users. So again, if you're making a table, you want to use the table function within Word to make that table, and you want to give it table headers. But unfortunately in Word, you really need, in terms of screen reader accessibility, you need to avoid creating very complex tables. So you need to avoid things like having merged or split cells or multiple layers of headers, because the way that Word communicates this to screen readers is inadequate. If you're converting your documents to PDF, there are ways in Adobe Acrobat to make complex tables accessible, and you can do that, but not within Word. So generally, if you have complex tables within Word, it can be better to break them up into simpler tables. You don't want to use tables for formatting. So in the bad document just now, we saw that list had been put into two columns by making an invisible table and then putting content into that. And that's a bad practice, because then you'll get announcements about tables and columns for screen readers that can be potentially confusing. You really want to use tables just for where you need to display data with headers. And I'll just show you quickly when you're adding a table in where you would do that from. So you want to go to Insert and Table, and we could just insert table in here. So we've got a table, and then in this table design view, we want to have header row selected if this header row at the top is acting as a header for the columns underneath, and we want to have first column selected if this first column is acting as a header for the rows that follow. And then that relationship between the headers and the cells will be able to be communicated correctly for screen reader users. So those are a few considerations around tables. oops, around tables. And then a few quick considerations around font size, style, and color. If we're thinking about font size, a text size of 12 point or higher will benefit most users, but there's not a hard and fast rule about this. Word documents do allow easy text resizing, but it's good to have a decent sized font because some users might not know how to use text resizing, and some users may be printing documents out. So it's good not to have a size that's too small. And avoiding overly decorative fonts and continuous capitalization can be good, as that can make text more difficult to read. There's a very important rule in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that around color contrast, that you need to provide adequate color contrast between text and background. And in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, that says that should be at least a 4.5 to 1 color contrast for regular size text. There is an easy way to check this within Word. If I bring up my document here, using the accessibility checker. So if we check accessibility, the accessibility assistant will bring up hard to read text contrast. So in this case, it identifies these light blue links at the bottom of the page, and it gives you the ability to review those, and it gives you a color to replace them. So here it's suggesting black to make sure that there's an adequate contrast. So you can use the accessibility assistant to quickly check for color contrast in text. There's also a relatively recent feature, if you're choosing a color for text, that there's now a toggle where you can choose high contrast only colors. So historically, the standard colors in Word, quite a lot of them, like this red, orange, yellow, green here, the light blue, they don't have that 4.5 to 1 contrast with the background. So you now have the ability to toggle so you just see high contrast colors, which makes it easier to avoid selecting some of those colors initially, which aren't going to have adequate contrast. And I just showed briefly there the accessibility assistant. So this is a really useful tool that you can use to find accessibility issues, explain why you should fix them, and how to fix them. I mentioned Checker and Assistant. So Accessibility Assistant is the latest version. This has been rolled out this year. I think it's rolled out sort of gradually, user by user. So I only got access to it about a month ago. So possibly not everyone will see Accessibility Assistant yet. If not, you'll see the old style Accessibility Checker. They're very similar, except Accessibility Assistant has some nice new functionality, like the ability to instantly fix all of your color contrast issues that we've just seen. Otherwise, they work very similarly. And if we go into the bad document here, we opened that by going to review, check accessibility. So we can open that up. As well as text contrast, it's going to come up with issues about missing alt text, use of merged or split cells in a table here, and other things. It's not absolutely perfect, so there's some things that it can't tell you. So it can tell you you've got missing alt text, but it can't necessarily tell you that your alt text is any good, because it doesn't know that. So it's not going to come up with every issue necessarily, but it does come up with a good range of basic issues and reports on them pretty reliably. So it's a very good thing to run and have a look at. And then just finally, in terms of things that I wanted to cover, it's good general practice just to provide a descriptive file name and title for your files. And you can find the title in Word if you go into File and Info, and you want to fill in the title here and give a nice descriptive title for your document. And then if you convert to PDF, this will also go across as the title of the PDF and be announced as the first thing by a screen reader when that PDF is opened. So it's this. And then I think I just have one final slide just to summarize. So we've looked at some good basic things we can do for word accessibility. Some golden rules are to use the formatting tools to provide meaningful structure with built-in headings and styles, ensure that meaningful non-text content like images has alternative text, and to use color and meaningful hyperlink text to ensure perceivability. And there's a couple of links on the slide deck there that you'll get when you get the slide deck to a Microsoft resource on making Word documents accessible, and also a resource we've got on the AbilityNet site, a worksheet on creating accessible documents as well. And I think now I'll stop sharing and we can
Thank you,
hand
James.
back to
Yeah,
Amy.
thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, a whistle-stop tour of useful tips that hopefully you can try out with your documents. I did want to ask you a bit about how people can go about embedding using accessible documents in their organisation. There are probably lots of people demonstrating great individual best practices, but generally, why aren't people already using Word accessibility features, do you think?
Yep. And it's a good question. To be fair, I think there are quite a lot of people in organisations that do use them. And I think that was borne out by our poll at the beginning, where there was a number of people who were saying they were using them. But in the UK as well, I think the public sector bodies' accessibility regulations have had an effect on awareness here, in the public sector at least, as if Word documents get published on intranets, they need to be accessible to meet those regulations. And we've definitely seen people come to us with concerns about document accessibility because of this. Generally, though, I think there are still a lot of people who are just not aware, they're just completely unaware that the features exist. Or possibly don't view using them as a priority if they do know about them. I think also potentially something that affects this is that I think Word accessibility is largely viewed as internal to an organization. So it possibly doesn't get as much attention by organizations as the public facing accessibility of things like their website and their native apps that are used by customers. But it is really critical, document accessibility, for ensuring the day-to-day work environment in the organization is accessible. And a lot of Word documents do get published to PDF and posted on websites for the public. And if you're following best accessibility practices in Word before you save to PDF, the documents you're publishing to the public should be more accessible as well. So I think it's not really right just to consider it as an internal issue, I think.
Yeah, we've had quite a few questions regarding converting from Word to PDF in the Q&A, so we may be able to address some of them later on. So just secondly, how can organisations embed accessible documents into their workflow? Are there particular positive steps you can recommend?
So we were just showing the accessibility checker, or as it's now called, the accessibility assistant. And I think that's a really useful thing to to get everyone in the organization using. I think if you can publicize that across the organization, get everyone using that, that's probably the single most productive thing you can do. So I discussed it won't pick up 100% of issues, but it's going to show a lot of basic issues like missing alt text and color contrast. It does provide some guidance on fixing things, so it has an educative aspect, and I think generally it greatly helps raising awareness. So that's a basic thing that I think is definitely worth doing. If you have Word templates within your organization, then it's definitely worth reviewing these and making sure that things like colors are passing contrast requirements, you're not using very small text and so on, making sure that suitable heading styles are available, and thinking about things like how those styles are named in the styles gallery in your templates can be useful as well. So making sure that when people are picking a style for a heading level from the style gallery, that the style names are offering a clear guide for them, so they know this is the header 1 in this situation, this is the header 2, and so on, so that's easy for them. And if there's styles in the style gallery that you don't need to use, you can potentially remove them in templates. The title style is a good example here, where people presume it should be used for the title of the document, but it's actually not very useful to use for accessibility because it doesn't map to an H1 tag, it just comes across as normal text. So that's one that could potentially be removed in your templates, or it could be mapped to an H1 style in your template. So there's things you can think about with your templates to make make that work better. But templates by themselves are not really enough. You also want to provide some level of training across the organization to make sure that everyone understands the basic concepts. And this is something that we can provide more detail in terms of what AbilityNet can help with.
Fantastic. Thanks, James. Some great points to bear in mind. So, yeah, as James mentioned, you may be aware or you may not be aware of the different types of training from AbilityNet. So if you're interested in learning more about creating accessible documents, not just in Word, but in PDFs and PowerPoint too, we do have some training options. So outlined here, we've got upcoming on the 31st of October, our online course for individuals, so covering some of the same ground as James has touched upon, but in much more detail. And that's how to create accessible documents and presentations. And that will cover Word and PowerPoint as well. And you can find out more at /accessible documents. And then you can also choose to have some in-house training options for your teams. So the course offers a longer detailed session delivered with the opportunity to ask questions, and it also offers advice and tips based on your existing documents and your unique organizational needs. And then our e-learning option, creating accessible content in Office 365 at /elearning 0365. Provides an option for people to learn at their own pace, and it's designed to be a course that a person can sit and cover in step-by-step modules, and also refer to as a glossary as you're going along producing content. And that covers Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook, and features a quiz and regular knowledge checks. Managers can also gauge which staff have taken the training and who is yet to complete it, and adjust permissions to track progress of team members. So if you do have any questions about our training, do get in touch at /training inquiry. And just to mention, you'll receive a follow-up email, including special offers about our training, specifically for you as webinar attendees. So do look out for that in your inbox in the coming week. So I can see there's lots of questions. So do fire away. We'll try and cover as many as possible. So just bringing some of them that have come through already. I've just marked a few. If you're able to do sort of quick fire answers to these questions, that would be great. So what's the difference between subtitles and heading levels? This is a question from Lucy.
Subtitles. So subtitles are something that you provide. So that would be provided for users who can't hear your content. So that would be more for sort of video content. And subtitles are usually for providing text in a different language. Heading levels are really just concerned with the structure of the document and the headings within the document.
Should there only be one H1 is a kind of follow-up question.
So this is a good question. So within document accessibility, I think it's not strictly necessary to have just one H1 necessarily within a document. So for web pages, usually the advice is to have a single H1. Within a document, you can potentially use H1 for your main heading, the title of the document, and maybe use an H1 for each of the chapter headings would be perfectly acceptable. Larger documents might be split up, and therefore it might make sense to have the chapter or section headings begin again with H1. So within a document, you can definitely have multiple H1s, and that's quite acceptable. You just want to ensure that the heading levels under that are nested in an appropriate way.
Okay, thank you. And then we've had a couple of similar questions. So do the styles transfer over if you convert the document into a PDF? Is it still accessible? Or I think, yeah, if you can answer that, that would be great.
Yep, absolutely. So this is really important that, this is the easiest way to make sure that you're getting as much PDF accessibility as possible is if you're creating them from Word, do everything that we're mentioning in the webinar today. So if you do things like use correct styling, correct heading styles for your headings, make sure the lists are use the list style in Word, make sure that the tables are marked up properly as tables and so on. All of these things will convert across as long as you can create a tagged PDF. So the thing that you want to avoid using is print to PDF. You don't want to use that because that creates an untagged PDF. But as long as you use save to PDF, or if you have a copy of Acrobat, you may have a convert to PDF button. If you use those with your Word document, it will create what's called a tagged PDF, which takes all that good style information and converts it across to the PDF and makes sure that that sort of information is all available for screen readers in the PDF. So it's really best practice to, certainly if you're intending to create PDFs from Word documents, to get all of that good, all the good practice we've been talking about today. You want to do that in the Word documents, and then you'll get a much more accessible PDF out of it when you save to PDF.
Thanks. If you make a Google Doc and you save it as a Word doc, will things like headings carry over between formats? Asks Phil.
I think it may be problematic. So I think it. I'm not absolutely certain about this. I know there's problems with Google Doc to PDF doesn't necessarily work properly in terms of keeping things. I'm not entirely sure about Google Doc to Word, so I'm afraid I wouldn't totally be able to categorically answer that. I know it doesn't work very well in terms of Google Doc to PDF.
Okay. We may be able to provide a bit more information about that, yeah, after the session on the recording page at /Word webinar. A question from Emmy: are there plans to do a session like this on PowerPoint slides or Excel, or do you have any quick tips? I know we do have some alternative training about it, but if you have anything brief to mention, that would be great.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, yeah, because we do a full PowerPoint training as well. A lot of the things do apply to PowerPoint that we're talking about. The main, I think, difference, a big difference in PowerPoint is in the accessibility checker, you also get a reading order option, which is important to look at. And the reading order tool allows you to make sure that the elements in the PowerPoint slide appear in the correct order for screen readers. And this isn't as necessary in Word because Word documents tend to be more linear, but because PowerPoint slides are created by usually with different images and text boxes, there's an important reading order option in the accessibility checker, which lets you set the reading order for the PowerPoint slide. This is all covered in the training that Annie mentioned that we do on creating accessible documents and presentations. So we go into PowerPoint in some detail as well as Word. So we talk about the things that are a bit different between the two.
I think we've just got time for one or two more questions. One is, how can you ensure that floating text boxes are read in the intended order? Often they seem to be read in the order that they were added instead of the visual order.
Yeah, this is a real problem. So we go into this in our full Word training again. There we suggest, instead of using the text box function, just to avoid using it, and instead to use borders and shading to create the same effect, visual effect of a text box, but you don't have that problem that it's not out of the content order and potentially appears in the wrong place. So avoiding using text boxes is one way around this. You can fix it if it's something that you're then converting to PDF and you're more worried about the PDF that's produced at the end of it. Then you can fix in. You could also fix the reading order in Acrobat as well. But generally, we recommend using not using the text box function, potentially using borders and shading to achieve the same thing. But we do cover that off in our full document accessibility webinar.
Thank you. I think we've just got time for one quick one, which is, can screen readers read PDFs as well as Word docs, or Word docs,
Absolutely. So as long as the PDF is tagged, so it's this thing that we mentioned before, that when you create your PDF, you want to make sure it's a tagged PDF, and a tagged PDF is a PDF that has that metadata that says this is a heading, this is a list, this is a paragraph. So it needs to be tagged. And then a screen reader can read it in just the same way that I was showing for the Word document. So you can go in, you can browse it by heading, you can use screen reader functions on it, So PDF can be an accessible format. Unfortunately, it's often not, because people create PDFs that are just scans of pages, or they don't create tag PDFs. But PDF can be an accessible format for screen readers if it's created in the right way.
Okay, thank you. And just we have had a couple of questions saying, is the recording going to be available? Yep, recording the slides and the transcript will all be on /Word webinar shortly after this broadcast, and you'll be sent an email with the link to access that too. So just to wrap up, thank you so much, James and Andrew with My Clear Text, and Kelly, my colleague, for helping out in the background. And just a little bit more information, as we mentioned, about the training. You can find out more at /training. And if you want to use the code AbilityNet Webinar 10 when booking, you can save 10% on all our courses for individuals. And we also offer accessibility audits and testing, which are detailed on the next slide. Yeah, and accreditation and certification and consultancy and strategy. So those are delivered brilliantly by James and his expert team of colleagues. And then just another thing that you might be interested in, we also run our annual TechShare Pro conference. So early bird tickets are available until the 1st of October, and it's a premier accessibility event, and you can find out more at techsharepro.com. And just finally, you can also sign up for our newsletter if you aren't already, at /newsletter for latest advice about inclusion and accessibility. And for our next free webinars at /webinars. Coming up, the next one on the 17th of October is about essential tips for online safety and support. And you might have seen content in the news this week about Moira Stewart and online scams. So yeah, do come along to that. And on the 23rd of October, you could learn about accessibility planning for 2025. And on the 20th of November, it's an introduction to AI for older people. So thank you again to everyone who's joined us, and do complete the feedback form that you'll be directed to at the end, and hope to see you at the next session. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.